What's up, guys? Today we're going to be going over the two-tailed fox with his new callus and seeing how good it is. Is this the new DPS king in Destiny 2? And there's going to be a lot of breaking down going on in this video. It might get a little bit complicated at times, but I think I put in quite a lot of effort, so hopefully you guys enjoy. And so what this callus is, adds an additional arc rocket to the second shot in a volley. The arc rocket jolts targets. So jumping into Carl, just to show off how the rocket works, as you see there is a third rocket shot now, but if we look at the damage of the impact, the first one hits for these two numbers right here, then the second one, once again hitting for the same numbers plus a third impact. So basically what the callus does for its own damage is add a third impact that's slightly less damage than the normal ones, but then it will also apply jolt to the target, which is going to be the biggest thing that this callus will do. So now with follow-up rockets, once the first one applies the jolt, as you'll see, the impact will now also jolt the target on the second rocket, hitting for the 17.4 thousand number also. I know it's hard to see the numbers, but trust me, that is true. But now, the way this rocket works, the solar rocket also applies Scorch, which means on the second one, it will then ignite, doing a lot of damage instantly, and that ignite can reproc the jolt. So really the DPS of this rocket is tied to how often you can proc the jolt and the ignitions. That's going to be a huge chunk of the damage. So trying to break down that, first for solo, if you're the only person shooting at a boss and you're the only one using this rocket, it's going to be pretty straightforward. So jumping over to a strike boss, for all the numbers in this video, I'll be using the verse boss numbers, not verse Carl. Carl is a major. Sometimes with rockets it's a little bit different, and as you see, even though they're the same light level, the numbers are actually higher on the boss. And the way it works when you're playing solo is the first rocket will apply the Scorch and the jolt, then every rocket impact after the first will cause the jolt, every other rocket will proc the ignition, which also procs a secondary jolt. So over the 4 rockets, this is the numbers that the rocket's doing. You'll proc jolt 5 times and the ignition twice for a total of 787,000 damage, which is quite a lot from just 4 rockets of a rocket launcher. So to determine the solo DPS, what I'm going to do for all the rockets in this video is shoot 2 and 4. Mostly use the 4 rocket number for the comparisons. But the thing about Two-Tailed Fox is for its own DPS, since it's a 1 mag rocket, it's going to take quite a while to shoot off your ammo, for taking almost 9 seconds. So DPS of 2 is 122, at 4 it's 88, and as you shoot more and more, you'll see this steadily decline, and it'll probably steady around the 70,000 number. So even though the rockets do a lot of damage, the rate of fire is extremely slow compared to other rockets in the game, which is going to be the huge trade-off of this rocket. The Two-Tailed Fox can also hold 8 with base reserves. With double reserve perks, it'll go up to 10. So total damage output of this weapon is extremely high, at least 1.6 million up to 2 million with full reserves, which is quite a lot and will be one of the strong suits of this weapon for sure. If you want to get the most damage out of a rocket in the game, this will definitely be one of the highest, if not the highest. I think the Deathbringer might be kind of close, but it's going to be way more RNG. So this is definitely extremely strong for total damage output. So for solo, the numbers are pretty straightforward, but for fire teams, this is where it gets a lot more complicated, because the way the jolt works, you only need one person using Two-Tailed Fox to apply the jolt, but after that, anyone on the fire team can proc the jolt, and I believe it's tied to an internal cooldown on the enemy, and I tried multiple times to see how fast it could be reprocced, and the answer I got to was roughly 0.9 seconds. Every 0.9 seconds, the target can be jolted, and it could be anyone in the fire team landing the shot to actually jolt the enemy. So once you're in a fire team, the jolt damage that we were calculating into the Two-Tailed Fox damage could actually be going to other players. So going with that information that the jolt can be procced roughly every 0.9 seconds, using a Two-Tailed Fox adds, kind of like Anarchy, 24.6 thousand DPS to the entire fire team, and who's getting what portion of that 24.6 thousand might be different every single run, just depending on whose shot lands when. So now the question is, if you use one Two-Tailed Fox, is the plus 24,000 DPS that your fire team is going to be bumped up by a net positive compared to the DPS you're going to lose using the Two-Tailed Fox yourself? So for this, we need to compare it to a few other rockets in the game. This video is going to be pretty long as is, so I'm just going to pick two. First, the G-Horn, then a Legendary Rocket taking advantage of Wolfpack rounds from G-Horn. So first with the G-Horn, its own damage has never been too good. It's been alright, and it's been nerfed a few times. So right now, looking at damage on the same strike boss, it's only for a lot of numbers. The Wolfpack rounds do 8 impacts and detonations, along with the base rocket, for a total of 107,000, quite a lot less than the two-tailed fox. And looking at the rate of fire, it's going to be a lot quicker because it's a 2 mag. So the same 4 rockets with the G-Horn only takes 4.9 seconds, which means the DPS over 4 rockets is going to be actually slightly lower than 4 of the two-tailed fox, but G-Horn might not fall off as much as you shoot off your entire reserves. But the main reason to use G-Horn is to give Wolfpack rounds to your Fireteam members that are using Legendary Rocket Launchers, so taking advantage of the best one in the game, the Hothead with Field Prep and Clown. Looking at this, with Wolfpack rounds from my teammates, it's going to do a lot more damage with the initial rocket, and the inside boss spec increased the Wolfpack rounds, which means a total damage of 157,000 per rocket with the Hothead. So now looking at the rate of fire, once again, it can have 2 in the mag with Clown cartridge, meaning 4 shots take 4.8 seconds, which means the DPS of Hothead plus Wolfpack rounds is 131,000, which is obviously quite a lot higher than both the G-Horn and two-tailed fox over 4 plus rockets. With Field Prep, you can also hold 8 up to 10 with double reserves, which means a total damage output of 1.2 to a little over 1.5, so pretty good, but not quite that of the two-tailed fox. So answering the question we had before is, if you have one person on the fire team using two-tailed fox just to proc the jolt on the target, does that increase from all the different jolts going on make up for the damage you lose yourself compared to some of the other top options in the game? Well, let's go ahead and run some numbers. So first, looking at just the DPS of the Hothead with Wolfpack rounds compared to the two-tailed fox, you see the two-tailed fox is 42.6 thousand lower, and as we said, it's giving the fire team plus 24.5 thousand, so it should be a net negative to the entire team's DPS, because the damage you lose yourself does not make up for the damage you're giving to the entire fire team. But the big catch is the 24.5 thousand is free damage that you wouldn't otherwise have, and the two-tailed fox does a lot of total damage once you can get through all of your ammo. So not only is the two-tailed fox better for total damage output, it's also giving your fire team a huge chunk of free damage that otherwise you wouldn't be doing. And just for science, let's say the jolt isn't tied to like an internal timer and it's just whenever you do X amount of damage. So let's say every single rocket in a fire team will reproc the jolt, which is what some people think is going on. I'm going to be doing more raids with a fire team tomorrow, so I'll definitely be testing a little bit more in detail, and before the raid comes out, I'll be making a more overall DPS video, so I'll probably give you guys the results of tomorrow's testing then. But let's just say every single rocket in the fire team procs jolt. So if you have 1 G-Horn, 1 two-tailed fox, and 4 hotheads, the entire team's DPS is going to be just under 800k at 794,000. So what happens if you drop the 1 two-tailed fox and just run 1 G-Horn plus 5 hotheads? The DPS goes quite a bit lower at 743.7 thousand. So if every single rocket shot can proc jolt, dropping 1 hothead for 1 two-tailed fox will be the highest DPS. But even without every rocket proccing jolt, let's say the 0.9 second-ish cooldown is correct, you can definitely make the case that two-tailed fox itself is not the DPS king, right? But you could make the case that it is the damage king. The DPS loss isn't that bad, and the total damage output you're going to gain from one person on the fire team using two-tailed fox is going to be so high that I think it's going to be worth it for most raid boss fights. So I can foresee the optimal raid team being 1 G-Horn, 1 two-tailed fox, then 4 hotheads or 3 hotheads plus 1 bump in the night with chill clip if you're a fan of that rocket. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of information in this video. When it comes down to it, the exact numbers just determine on how often jolt shot and the ignition can be procced. I think the ignition is pretty straightforward. Every two-tailed fox that hit the boss, it should ignite. So if it's only one person shooting it, it'll be every second for them. If you have 2 people, it will still be every second rocket that hits in total to the boss. So I think the ignition DPS should be pretty straightforward. It just really comes down to how often that jolt can be procced. But either way, even with the cooldown, I still think it's 100% worth using at least 1 on your fire team. and the two-tailed fox is definitely extremely good right now. Anyways, that's gonna be it for the video. Like usual, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.